All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started, and a little bit early, but those who come in or pop in later can catch it on the front end of everything. Just do some housekeeping, and then of course this will be recorded. We're going to work on Lunch's Database 15 today, and if you want to see where we are as we progress through this process, you can go up to the announcements, and in the announcements area you'll see the screencast for each class, and then you'll see what we covered. So we're moving through it pretty rapidly because we're going to be coming to the point of to that point in the course where you'll be working on some independent study types of things, and we'll talk about that here just in a little bit. Again, this is week 7, and I have some resources here for you that you can take a look at. And I always add these. Now, some of these you're going to see are not visible on your machine because I've got them hidden off, so don't get all fretted about that. But everything down to here are just some applications of databases and some good things that we can do with them. And again, I like to show you some of those so you can just kind of get an idea that this is a tool that we can use to do some good things. This couple of them, these deal, I think, with conservation, wildlife. Here's one on adopt a pet. And so I would encourage you to take a look at those. Now, just so that we stay on track, next week is of course the 17th, and there's the 17th and the 19th. And the 19th obviously is a day that we have for fall free days, if I'm not mistaken. Everybody, I think, knows that. And so I'll do some work on the 17th, but we won't be having any class on the 19th. I think I'm correct. I'll check the university schedule right now. I think I'm on target as far as that goes. That it is fall free days are next week. And I had an interesting experience. Oh, it's been about 7 years ago. It's been here. I had a student, a very, very good student, and she did quite well, graduated, and about this time of year she called me, and didn't call me, sent me an email, and she was pretty hot under the collar, and she was angry because her company didn't have spring break. And I thought, where did we fail you? Obviously we had. But spring break is, no, it was spring 17, 15 now. Oh, fall free days, that's what I'm after here. I'm in the wrong. Fall free days are this 19th or the 22nd of October, so I'm right. So we will not have class on the 19th of October, which is obviously a week from today. Okie dokie. Now let's get back here to the course, and we'll talk about some, and I mentioned some of the housekeeping items that we've got going on. And as you see each week, I try to add in some practical applications or some examples out there that you could see what we're doing with databases. And we'll open up week 9 as far as that module. Okay, and you can see we're working ahead. Okay, and then I've got some other resources here. Lunch's Database 15 Part 1 and 16 Part 1. I don't know why, I don't recall why I did that, but obviously I did it. And then I got a Zoom recording of each of those. So all else fails, we've got that done. Then we move on into the end of the month, end of October, and you'll start to get some of these assignments, the internet exercise types, and that's from the Business Intelligence textbook. That's one of the required books in the course. It's that brown one, and you'll have some of those. Then I'll have you'll work. This is an independent study. You'll work on check your understandings. If you look in the textbook, you'll see several of those. There's 1 or 2 each chapter. Check your understanding, and I have some instructions for you. If you choose as an alternative, and you have your own machine and you're comfortable doing it, you can go into the Patrick text and you can download a baby version of Oracle. And that is over on, that's Appendix A, page 781. Now, you won't be able to do it here in the lab. If you're in the lab, you try to do it in the lab. But if you got your own machine, proceed with caution. And I'm not sure if they take a Mac or not. They might. But there's Appendix A is how to get your copy of it, and they give you a baby, like I said, baby version of Oracle, and then a quick start guide in Appendix B. That's in the Patrick text. So if you want to be able to say to an employer, yeah, I've had some experience with Oracle beyond just what we've done here and seeing some of the differences in syntax, that's fine. And then I've got a SAS, a visual analytics project for you. I've got instructions there. And then you'll see some more of those assignments from the business intelligence text. So a little bit, this will change a little bit in terms of how things have been going. And then got those assignments due. And as you know, we're working ahead, so you just load them up where we need to go to, where they go. And then this is, as I mentioned here, this is time for you to work on the Oracle, if you choose that, or to do the Check Your Understanding and the SAS project. And then, of course, that Thanksgiving, there's no class that week. So we'll start to move to that point where you're pretty much really working on your own, and you'll have those big assignments to do. Week 14, same story. Okay, that the Check Your Understanding, those assignments are due that week as well, if you choose to do the Oracle as an alternative. So again, I want to make sure you can do the Check Your Understandings, or you can do the Oracle assignment. If you do the Oracle assignment or you download it, all that business, I just want to see some screenshots that would show me that you've indeed done it. Now remember, if you do it on your machine, and it needs to be your machine, it's your call, your responsibility, your issue if something happens, okay? So that's why I always try to say to people, you have the option to do it, but if you get into problems, you can. Now, I have also some extra credit instructions there if you want to do extra credit and when those are due. And then we come into week 15. And you'll note here the SAS project. This is from Teradata University. There are 4 sets of data you're going to upload there. So that's pretty. I'm going to have you work with that product. Teradata University has that product over there in kind of a non-commercial version, and you'll be running some queries, doing some navigating, and of course I have some very explicit instructions for you on how to do that. So by the time you've left, you've had a little bit of Oracle, you've had certainly SQL, you understand the data warehouse concept, you'll have had a chance to work with SAS visual analytics. So you will have worked with almost every major platform that's out there, or their derivative. And that will really put you way ahead of everybody else who's out there in the job market, because they just aren't getting these kinds of skills. And employers really don't want to spend the money or the time getting you up to snuff. And if you are following along and you're really understanding what we're doing with Access, you understand how a database is put together. You really have enough knowledge. You have all the knowledge you need, except we haven't done any data management, which is the programming that takes a database or databases or a warehouse and inserts it into a website, or uses it to create an e-commerce, or attaches it to an e-commerce module or something like that. And that's not what we're intended to do. The most important thing is 2 things. One, that you can use the dashboard that's in front of you, especially if it has a type of DB function, which it probably will. Number 2 is you can communicate effectively with the people there in your company, either a vendor or the folks who work there for the DB. So we're going to do some work on chapter 15 today. So let's go on over and we'll go to the files section. Okay. And then we're going to look for the Patrick files. And we'll find those and then download them to our desktop. Now here they are, and that's the zip file, the Patrick materials. I'm going to download it. Okay. If you just click on the link and you try to look at you try to see it, you'll get a rendering. Now it's in this. If you download it, you'll get it into you'll get in a little bit of a folder view. So here's what I do. I'd take the Access SQL code down here, because that's got the code. I'll copy and replace. Let's see who that is. Hi, Conley. Glad to see you here. And then SQL Fun. I want to download that and then copy and replace. Now, each time you work on one of these, for example, like today, once you've got it on your desktop, then you want to go ahead and rename it, okay? And that'll and then save it. And I would call this LD15, because that's what it is, okay? Now, if you open this file up, if you don't save it to your desktop, i.e. the native environment in which you're working, whether you're on a desktop here in the lab or in your or you're in a desktop at home, wherever, you are going to have problems, because it's going to be treated as a system file. That is, it's going to be treated like a pseudo file or a view-only file, and you'll have trouble saving it. So you want to make sure that you do that. Now, we've been going on with this concept of a data warehouse, okay? And we're running all these queries off of this one, okay? We're running all these queries off of this one database. Now I'm going to open this back up, and I thought I threw the code. We'll get the code for chapter 15. There it is. And you can just dump it back on your desktop, and we'll take a look at it. And as usual, okay, we'll open this up for a minute. The author's going to show us, an Oracle version, and then a dual version, which is Oracle and Access both work with this, etc. No big deal there. But a key thing in terms of your understanding of this is what we're doing here, not just pasting code into software, but what we're trying to achieve and the kinds of problems that we're going to run into, the types of information that we want to get. And so when I go back here, okay, and I'm going to go back to the analytical cube and find it for just a second. All right, there's that JPEG. As I've talked about many, many times, and I can't emphasize it enough, if you look at that cube, you're going to see it's got a product, which are dimensions. The retailer, those are dimensions. Dimensions are like variables or attributes, okay? Date. A date is one of those funny objects, if you will. It can be a fact, or it can be treated like a dimension, okay? And it just depends. And this is important because of what you're going to get. When we use the dimensions, okay, like product or retailer as shown here, we're really talking about the who, the what, and the where. The when and how much questions are typically in the data, are in the fact data or fact tables. And so when we combine the two of them, then we do the slicing and dicing as we've been doing. So we'll go back here for just a second. Okay, now I'm going to diminish the screen down here, and we'll talk about this chapter 15. Now, you always ought to have your book with you so you can follow along with some of the narrative, and I always have it with me too, so because I've got mine filled with notes and things that I want to make sure that I pass on to you. And to really get the most out of this, you really should have it so you can understand what we're trying to accomplish and what's going on in each one of these. There on page 557, he shows you the difference between a union and a join, okay? Now, when we do a join, we've talked about this, typically the most common form of join we do is an inner join, and that is where we match up two tables on the basis of a similar ID. I have like a customers table, and every customer has a unique ID, and then I have a sales table, and I embed that customer ID field in the cells, and then I can link them and get the intersection. Okay, and we've talked about left versus right joins. When we talk about a union, we're talking about merging two tables. Okay, and what happens is once we merge those two tables, if there are any duplicates, we get rid of them. Okay, so the text there tries to show you that notion of we've got, you know, a table A and a table B, okay, and then we end up with a join, which gives us that table AB. Now, there is something to kind of understand or think about, and again, this is really more about you understanding how much information your firm's getting, or your company, or how much information you're getting versus not. Most tables are very, very tall. There'll be a ratio, typically 15 to 20 or 15 to 100, excuse me, between the number of columns, that is the dimensions, and the records. And the simple reason is you know, there are only so many dimensions we can get. But so you always want to make sure, do I have the key dimensions? And as we've talked about a dashboard, that whole concept, okay, and how we build a dashboard, okay, you've got them, and key performance indicators. You don't have anything unless you've got the right dimensions. That's what strings all this together, okay? So most tables are very, very tall, okay? And when we combine them, all right, then we enlarge the table, and what gets enlarged is the record set, certainly, but what really gets enlarged then is the columns, i.e. the dimensions, i.e. the variables. You say, well, why did you go through all that verbiage about that? It's important because once I've combined them and I have that many more dimensions, I can start to get a more complete picture of the facts, like who bought the stuff, when did they buy it, how did they buy it, who are they, etc. So we use unions, okay, as a tactic to get more and more dimensional data, okay, not demented, but dimensional data about transactions, customers, whatever is important that we're trying to get. And that lets us paint a fuller picture of what we're trying to understand. And that again is typically going to be transactions of some kind, okay? It might be chronological data. It just depends. But the more tables we throw together, the richer the data set, as long as we're using the right dimensions. That's really what counts. Well, the authors make a point of that there in terms of talking about the difference between a union and a join, okay? A union also is economical. It throws that extraneous data, i.e. if there are duplicate records, it gets rid of them. Now, there's a union all, and that's over on page 559. And the authors, and the union all keeps everything. It doesn't get rid of duplicate data. So if you're concerned about having, typically what people will do is they'll run a union all, so they have legacy data, okay? And because you might have, 100,000 records, and out of those records there may be 4,000 that are dupes. You don't want to just pitch them because there may be something in there that you need to know. So what folks will do is they'll do a union all, and then they'll turn around and do a union. And so they have an entire legacy set, and then they have a streamlined or cleaned up set of data, okay? And that's kind of data cleaning and preparation at the macro level. And now, not to confuse the issue, but this can occur not just within a database, but at a data warehouse level. And there's a collection of typically when I use the term data warehouse, we're talking about more than one database linked to the other. But we can use a data warehouse strategy or approach, as we've done here with the lunches database, where we have all these dimension tables, and we just keep writing more and more queries, and we just keep developing more and more. That's a strategy or a tactic, okay, to simply just harvest as much information as fast as we can. Now, over on page 558, they show us an example of a union, and that's going to be 51. So let's open up the code. Have your Access opened up, okay, or ready to go, and then we're going to open up the text file, okay. And here's 15.1. Now, you've been doing this long enough that you probably some of you who aren't here doze off while we're doing this. And truthfully, I have to say, yeah, as I told you before, SQL, structured query language, is not hard to learn. It's a demand language. It says, here's what I want, here's how I want it given to me, here's where I want you to go get it from. That's all it is. It doesn't involve the process, okay, the process and definitional qualities that you're going to find in a full-bodied programming language, say like Python or whatever. But it's good for you to understand this. And number two, I think it's just good. Those of you who are athletes know if you don't work out, you're not going to perform. And it's the same way. When you go out in the world, you're out there, you're paid to think. And I truly believe when you work through a lot of these problems and you learn how to take sets and structures and see how those things relate, it's useful and helpful to you when you're out at work. It just strengthens your brain. Your brain is a muscle, okay? One of the most remarkable things we've found using the MRI, for example, is that people who have an addiction of some sort, when they engage in that behavior, there's literally a neural pathway that gets opened up in their brain, physical neural pathway, okay? And that's why it's so hard for people, for example, if they smoke, the tobacco's out of their body, but the tobacco's not out of their brain. So, yeah, let me give you this week's chapel addendum. Watch what you look at, watch what you think, because it buries itself in your heart. Okay. That's why I doubt my salvation, because I hate the Boston Red Sox. But what can I say? Okay. And I'm sure they're probably a Boston Red Sox friend out there, a supporter, will be going, hey, Dr. Harmon. Right? Yeah, right, the president. Go ahead. He's not listening. Okay. Now we're going to do that. We're going to run the query, and you'll notice, and I'll put it back up here so we can just see it. It's going to be a little bit easier. We're going to select, we're selecting, and then there are the fields, the columns, the dimensions we're selecting. And we're getting it from the 1501 first table. And then below it is the next select statement, and sandwiched in between is the union. Okay? So we're just combining the two tables. That's all there is in terms of, so we're just taking two select queries from two different tables, and we're using the union. Now, if you see the very last line of the code, you're going to see an order by, okay, the number 1. Now, most folks will do this. Now, you can build on this by putting some more conditional statements in, etc., or Boolean statements, to just further refine what you get from the second table. It's up to you. But we've got that in here, and let's get ready, and we'll run it. And there it is, and there's the result set. Now, if you're following along in the book, which I pray you are, so you get the most of this, you'll see at there, page 558, the beginning tables, first and second table, okay, and then the union, okay. Now, I want you to notice something. If you look at the bottom of page 558, you're going to see 7 rows. Or if you look up here, you're going to see 7 rows. Okay? There are 2 from the first, 2 from the second, 2 from the first table, 2 from the second table, and 3 from both. That's how we end up with a 7. Okay? And that's because any duplicates got bled out. So we're good to go. Now, we'll save this as 15.1. And let's go down to the view. When we go down, pardon me, we go down to the design view. Well, let's just give me the data sheet view. Okay. If we were working in the design view, we'd see the 2 tables, and we'd see the lines on business. But just for your information, if you take a look up at the top into the toolbar, you'll see it shows the union. Okay. And as you know, I like to dispense advice about dating and life. And remember, when you're dating, it's an intersection. They show you what they want you to see, and you show them what you want to see. You're both on your best behavior. And then when you get married, that all ends. You see every single foible, fault, and good thing about a person you've married. And so that's the union. And when you go through the wedding ceremony, your heart will be pounding, and you'll have a dry throat, and you'll hear the words as he says, this is forever, blah, blah, blah. So think about that before you make that union. But let me put it like this. If you're going to date, use it as a way to filter and sort and figure out what you really want, and make sure that you're good friends, because if you're not, you will be in for a long, long experience. And death till us part is a long time. Okay. And I'm convinced my wife did something wrong because she's been punished by having me as a husband. All right. Enough of that frivolity. All right. We're over on 15.1, and 15.1 shows the top of page 559, an inner join. And they've shown us the difference between that. And we don't need to run it, but I'm just going to show you here in the code. Okay. Here's the inner join. Now, notice that rather than having a query, then the word union, and then a second query, what we've got is a query, okay, and then a conditional statement, a Boolean statement of equivalence, where A dot number underscore 1 equals B dot number underscore 2. And we order them by A dot number 1. So what we're doing is we're joining a couple of tables, or we're joining some tables, and the inner join is either going to be 2 foreign keys that match up, or a primary key and a foreign key. Sometimes we'll do 2 primary keys, but it's well, there's no way you sometimes that's such a rare thing. There's no point in going into that. But notice the difference here. The operative word here is where, and then that statement of equivalence. So I don't think you got to run that, but I think you've seen enough inner joins you understand. But if we run it, I do want to make sure that you see, if you take a look over on page 559 in the result table of the inner join, you see 3, not 7 out. Let's just go ahead and do it so you can see the difference in the output, and you can see why it's important to understand that. So we'll do create, query design, close this jewel, we'll do the SQL, and we'll run it. Okay. Now this time you say we have a result set. I'll call this 15.1. I'm going to save it as 15-1 inner join. He probably wanted us to save it as something, but I'm being lazy today. Now, you say, what happened? Well, what happened is we took the 2 tables, the fields from them, and we matched them exactly. Okay? So we didn't just grab everything. An inner join will typically produce a smaller data set than a union, and certainly than a union all. So what's the point? The point is this. Think of it like a series of targets. An intersection is a bullseye. Pardon me, an inner join typically is kind of like a bullseye. You really get everything you want. A union, a little bit larger target area, a union all, an even larger target area. And that's really the best way to think of it. Now, this will be useful to you when you're out there and you're looking on a dashboard, and you'll be given, probably what will happen is you're going to be, as I've said before, you'll have two types of queries. One, it will be the regular kinds of queries that you run, and hopefully those will all be automated. And if you took 1123, we've worked with macros. I think we've even worked with some macros in here a little bit. And so you press the button and the reports run. But then you'll have those serendipitous or those what-if kinds of situations where they'll want you to produce a query and to run a query, and that might entail using one of these, using an intersection, a union, or a union all. It will be up to you to decide what your strategy is going to be, and that'll be driven by the business problem, okay? And that's really, normally the process is this. You'll run a union all, you'll clean that up, okay? It's like unpeeling an orange. You'll get that done, and then you'll run a union, so you get rid of all the dupes, and then you'll run inner joins, and you'll do some joins. And if the people you work for are pretty astute, they're going to have almost every table is going to have certainly will have a primary key, and will have a whole bunch of foreign keys embedded in it, so you can link all those tables together. Okay, you say this sounds a lot like connect the dots. It really truly is. If you really want to put it in that, I think it is the best analogy for it. Just show you a real practical example here for just a sec. Okay, and let me move this jewel over, and then we'll go over here, and let's just go out to Esri Tapestry for a moment. Okay, and this is the zip code, zip lookup. All right, and we want to explore a neighborhood. Okay, your community's characteristics. Now, I'm gonna enter. What would be a good zip code? I don't know. But let's use Oklahoma City. We'll see the results. Okay. Now, they're going to tell it. Now, here's what they've given us. They've given us some data, and they tell us here are the major, what we call psychographic groups. So if you're a marketer, okay, and you get your first job marketing, and you're asked, can you give us a report about, we're thinking about locating, whatever, okay, or would it be worthwhile for us to do an email campaign to everybody in this zip code, or whatever data list you have that you're working from. This is a nice little tool. Or if you're just saying, what are the prospects for X, Y, and Z? Well, this tool starts by, okay, giving us, filtering some data out for us. There's a whole data set under here, okay, and then a map if we want, and we can get some more details if we want about this. Who are these people? It's very, very slick and extremely well done. And you can see, look at income and net worth. They give you the visualization on this is just incredibly good. Now, the thing that makes this such a powerful tool, and the reason I preach it to you, particularly if you're a marketer, is Tapestry. The people at Esri, their company out in California, have designed this product such that every year they simulate the United States Census. Now, let me put that in perspective for you. It takes the government 10 years to run the census. These folks have a magic algorithm, some secret sauce that lets them mimic, and then then they go back and they will check to see how are we doing when they'll get some periodic census data, and they're usually about 99% accurate. Unbelievable. And the beauty is they put this all, okay, into nicely laid out reports and maps. Now, the professional version of this is the baby version. The professional version is extremely, extremely expensive. But again, this is using a database, doing a union all, I'm doing a union, then union all, then filtering. And when we're down here looking particularly at the soccer moms, this segment, okay, we've filtered that out to get everybody who matches up in that zip code and matches that area. And then to be really nice to us, they show us how are these folks who fit this psychographic distributed across the country. So if I'm wanting to, sell folks of this ilk, hey, I'm taking a look at this map and saying, and notice you'll see they also tend to run because they tend to be urban dwellers, etc. Suburban dwellers, they tend to cluster around major cities. Well, there's Oklahoma City and Tulsa, as you can see. There's Dallas, Fort Worth. There's Houston, Austin, San Antonio. There's Nashville. I guess that is Tennessee. That's Ohio above, maybe, right? There's St. Louis, Kansas City. That's Omaha. There's Phoenix, Denver. Pretty much. So nice, but again, that's what's going on underneath all that. All right, well, we'll close that off for just a sec. And it's fascinating, and if you ever come to my office, you'll see I have a tapestry poster hanging from the wall, not because I worship it each morning, maybe, but because I think it's just incredibly, it's a beautiful thing to see, first of all, and it's just so, you look at it, you go, wow, we really can find out a lot about the people we try to serve. Okay, so we've messed with 15 and 15.1, and we've done a join, we've done an inner join versus a union, and so far so good. So, we're working through here now. Over on 15, over on page 560, they show us the union all. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to grasp this or you'll have the intelligence to handle it, because this is going to be really, really complicated and really, really tough. The difference between a union and union all is the word ALL. I hope you can grasp it. I'm being sarcastic. Of course you can see it. But here's the cool thing. Just that one word, okay, boom, and we change the entire data set in terms of what we get. And if you want to see that, if you take a look at page 561, there, instead of 7 rows, at 561, we get 10 rows. And we'll just run it. Okay? And let's go ahead and we'll click create. And so we're going to get more rows this time. We'll get everything in the kitchen sink. For design, go to SQL. And we'll say run, forced run. Oh, I messed up on my select statement. There we go. Now forced can run. And this time we've got 10 rows of data, not 7. Okay. And when I kept my little list, we have 2 from the first only, 2 from the second only, and there's 2 from the first table, 2 from the second table, and 6 from both tables. Okay? And this would be 15 too. Now, whether you know it or not, or want to accept it or not, right now you know more about databases and you understand more how to use them and use them effectively than 95% of the people you'll ever work with or work for. Okay? Don't tell them that, because you'll hurt their feelings. But understanding these, databases are an extremely powerful tool to harvest data. Now, you'd say, okay, Dr. Harmon, what if I ran this union all and I've got 5,000 records and there's a lot of financial stuff or counts or fact data? What do I do with that? I have a very simple answer for you. Excel to the rescue. dump it back in Excel. If you have to do some heavy lifting in terms of mathematical work or analytical work, because it's easier to use. And that's so I use a database as a database, okay? And then a lot of times, and even some of the guy that writes the text we used on SQL, he just basically says put it into a pivot table, because it's intuitively a lot easier. In fact, the pivot table model is a lot of what you're going to recognize that when you start looking at SAS more closely. And my goal, hopefully, is to give you kind of a figure ground about what you're looking at and how these things work, so you won't be too intimidated by them. You really shouldn't. 15.3 over on page 562. He walks through. Well, let's look at the code. Okay. And he just builds in a little bit more each time. We've got the select statement, and again, you know, we're using a table pseudonym, okay, and that is the A dot, all right, and then we come down to we identify the two tables, employees and lunches, okay. By the way, when you look at you see this A dot blah blah blah, A dot blah blah blah, that mimics the domain name that you have out on the internet, okay? But what's happened is the field or the specific has been reversed. For example, okbu.edu, and that means our domain in the education domain out in the internet. So these same kinds of techniques are used. And this one in a database is just the opposite. We flip the table first, and then we give the fields that we're after. And as you come down, we're using we're using a statement of equivalence right here. We're grouping. We're having and then we're counting. Okay, we're using the count function. We're doing union all, and then we have what we call a hard code. Patrick, John, his name, okay, and then 0 from the dual, okay, and that's a constant table. We order it by the last name, okay, and he shows us the result table there at the bottom of page 562 with the last name, the first name, etc. And we even have John Patrick's name in there as employee 0. That's about all there is to it. Now, let's run it and see if he left us any surprises, because sometimes he will, and I can't remember I don't think I had any notes here on any surprises to look for. So we'll click Create, and we'll go to Query Design. We'll close it. Let me go back to the design view for a minute. I want to talk about this. Okay. When you work, for example, when you do SAS Visual Analytics, okay, or Oracle's products or any commercial product that's out there for an end user, i.e. a you and me, who just wants to see the data and try to find some results and make some sense of it, you're going to see this skeleton. You're going to see that this is the skeleton, and you'll see muscle on top of it, i.e. the tables that you can use will be listed there. And they'll usually be in an object with a table. You'll see the table out there. I'm going to show tables, for example. You'll see something like this. And then you'll have the blender part down here, okay, usually in a drop-down menu. And then you also will have the ability to do some mathematical work if you choose to, etc. So this is, as I said before, this is like, learning to drive a car using a Ford, what's the little tiny thing, the Prius or whatever it is, or learning to ride a bike with training wheels, okay? That's nothing pejorative about it, but what will happen is after you've been doing this for about 3 months, when you're out there using commercial products, you go, oh, that makes sense. They're all designed pretty much the same way. So we're going to remove the table, and we'll go down here to the SQL view, and we'll input our data, and let's see what we get. And I found a character from dual. Oops. And I need to put that from dual. Okay, and I want to order by last name. There we go. Last underscore name. Now let's see if it will play nicely with me. What? What character have I got at the bottom of that? Jump, dual. Has anybody else that's in here tried this? Does it work for you? Where'd you get the error? Oh, I put that junk in there, didn't I? I'm sorry. Thank you. Goodness gracious, I'm glad someone is awake here. It certainly isn't me. I'm just a holograph. I'm at home sleeping off the playoff game from last night. Okay. Now, this would be 15.3, and let's save that first of all, okay? And we've got there at the, we have the beginning tables, and we had the two beginning tables earlier, but we see the result table here, and I've got, I don't know, how many records have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About what I would expect. At the bottom of page 564, what you're going to see is the author. The author loves to put us through this kind of thing. Let's run forward. Let's run back. Let's run to the right. Let's run to the left. Okay. And, you know, people who are in basketball, when I'd see them basketball practice, I felt really bad for them because they run a lot. Okay. And, you know, I like football and baseball. It's kind of a little bit of a burst and then you're done. But what the author likes to do is say, okay, let's go through the weight station, and I'm going to show you, have you do a union, and then we'll do a little variation on it where we order by word one. And so if you see at the bottom of page 564, which is 15.4, the first example, he says we can use the order by clause, as if we have not learned that already, but we can do that. And it's almost like he's selling his Ginsu knives or the stuff you see at 3 o'clock in the morning that I can cook all this different food with it. Because you don't, and he's probably paid by the page because he goes through every kind of example in here. You can find, and example 2 is page 565. He does another order using that, or invoking the order, but just with a different field, okay, and showing us the different results we can get, which we would know that. And then at the top of page 566, he shows us a table reference using the order by clause, but in this case, okay, it's not in the text file. And then at the bottom of page 566, he shows us we can order by, and we order by to, okay, and there we're using a column position. So he shows us all these variations that we would want to do or could do if we cared to. And again, you can see those, and I don't know that it's all that wonderful for you just to sit there and copy and code it in. I think you could see it and kind of figure it out. 568, I'm looking over there. Okay, we do a number list. Now, page 569, he moves us into some fairly interesting stuff, and that's going to be, what is that? 15. We use the pull that down here for a second. All right. I'm going to save the query name as select. I'm in the bottom, in the middle of page 569. He has us develop a query and run it and save it as a view. Okay, here's the point. All right, here's the technique that's going on. If you look there, okay, you look at the query, it's pretty simple. Okay, we select everything from SEC 1505 first. In fact, it's probably down here. Pop down here. Here we go. And we select everything from this table. Then we do a union with everything in this table we order by 2. Okay, now we see the view. Okay, now at the and there near the bottom of page 569, we select everything into the table from the view. So we take it, we create a view, and then we insert a bunch of stuff into a table to add it. Okay, now that's really work I hope you're not doing when you're out there. I'm hoping that your company, and they probably will if they're pretty large, will have data inputted from a form, typically from the customer or a transaction. For example, you say, what do you mean? When you go to the store today, or if you go somewhere, you go, or you go somewhere and eat or whatever, or you buy gas. When you swipe your credit card, okay, that the electronic data is sent to your bank, etc. And the vendor, okay, that sold you where you swiped your card gets the same data. That's why they pay MasterCard, American Express, whoever, a fee. Okay, now once that's done, they have the data inputted. Okay, and there's no mistaking in the card, the expiration date, any of that stuff. And a lot of places, like say gas stations, I like to get input the zip code. Okay, and why do you do that? My wife said, why do we have to put in the zip code though? I said, it's pretty simple. They want to know where I'm coming from, and then they're going to start the map and see how far is it people come to and stop and buy our gas. And once they have that zip code plus all the other personal data, they can kind of hunt you down. So what they'll do is in their reports, they'll get kind of a little map, and it'll show it how far everybody was who traded with you. And so if on cue, or the little place down in the end, that little convenience store here before you get over to the highway, they want to know, is it people coming into Shawnee that buy stuff from me? Is it people going out? Is it people in Shawnee? Where are these people coming from? Now, the old-fashioned way that they did it, the way my dad did it, was he'd have people who'd sit for hours at particular times of day, and they'd get license plate numbers. Okay? Then they'd go pay the Department of Motor Vehicle to say, what's this person's address? And they'd get these long lists of addresses, and then he'd get a map out. He'd mark it all down, and I know if he was alive and I showed him some of the locational stuff that Ezra does, he'd probably blow his stack, because he'd say, I did a lot of work for nothing. Well, it wasn't for nothing, but he did a lot of work. Okay, now, where do we be? All right. Now, the authors over on page 570 and page 571 talk about the automatic data type conversion in a union. Okay, why? Well, what they do when we're running a union, if we have some data type differences, there will be some defaults in terms of how those data then are loaded into the new table, i.e. the union. Okay, and he walks you through that process. Okay, now this will be important for you to understand, because what's going to happen is one of these days you'll be sitting there and you'll be given one report that says, okay, here's report A, and here's report B, and then here's report C that is a product of A and B. And nothing looks right. It all looks funny. And it's because there are defaults in the union. When we do the union process, there are defaults in terms of handling the data. Okay? And so when you're out there, or in the textbook, this textbook on business intelligence, they talk about cleaning up data. Okay? a lot of times it's a process of going through and looking at those data formats and making sure you have what you want. And again, this is, he walks you through there in page 570 and in page 571 talking about that, okay? And, I had some notes here for it, and that automatic data type conversion is a whole lot like what happens when we profess a belief in Christ, and then the process becomes of God kind of fixing our data set, okay, and knocking the rough edges off of us, which is why my life passage, my Bible passage is Numbers 27:18. Jerusalem begat Hangwan. That's not true. That's a lie. I love Romans 8:28 through 38 because I think it tells the whole experience of being a Christian, that we're all a work in progress. And the incredible thing is that even after we go and we depart this life, which I know many of you pray for that to happen to me each day, but he's not listening because you need to be punished. Even when we go to heaven, that will be just a continual process of us just being made more and more like him. And that's a wonderful thing. So that whole passage there, I think, it tells us a little bit how that works. Okay, and he even begins working off the rough edges, even as the Bible says. This is my chapel addendum also. Okay, and look, there's not enough people here for me to give an offering, so I'm not going to preach a full sermon. Okay, but I would say this: the Bible even tells us that we don't even know how to pray, that the Holy Spirit intercedes for us, okay, in ways that we don't know. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? And then you've got Hebrews, which tells us that the Lord's up there. Yeah, he's the great high priest. He's working the numbers in heaven, and hey, what more could we want? I'd like a Mercedes and $100,000 a year. Okay, good enough. Yeah, the problem is that for many of you, if you became wealthy, your number one problem would be afraid of losing your wealth, or starting to ask yourself, do people like me because I'm rich, or do people like me because I'm me? Okay, I know there are many of you going, I'll take that problem and I'll deal with it. I'll hire an expensive psychologist to help me. That's what my wife said. But I thought, okay, that blows that argument to bits. Okie dokie. Unconventional unions. That's over on page 572. Okay. These are unions of tables with different data types, and oh mercy, this is where the fun begins. Now, if you look there on page 574 at the very bottom, and you don't believe me, my book is full of notes about data type conversions. Okay. And all the work that we've got to do, because it's just got the format, for example, on the Access SQL, the format, that function, okay, gets sketchy. All right, let's go down there and 15.7. Let's take a look at it. Let's try it and just might as well get the beating over with. Okay. My wife is such a nice person, and it's one of the stories her mother told, which embarrasses her terribly, but I love it, is when she was a little girl, she was acting up at church, and so her mom and dad, like most mom and dad said, in so many words, and when you get home, you're going to get it. And as they were headed home, she, according to her mother, cried out and said, "Stop! Punish me now! I want to get over it." So that was a sweet thing. It embarrasses my wife terribly. If she ever heard this, I might not wake up the next morning. But okay, we're going to create or replace the view, and let's see if this is going to give us the fits that I believe it will. And I had some key files I've added over there, if I'm not mistaken, in the files section where I've done some of that heavy lifting and reformatting and all that business. So let's see what we got. Yeah, see, I've got a syntax error because it won't accept the create table. Let me get the first line out and see if that'll do something with this. It may not. No. Okay. All right. If you want to see that, I'm being lazy. I'm going to diminish this down for just a second. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I have an LD15 parts 1 and 6. Let's go back over to the modules. And I think I even had mercy on myself because I remember sweating through some of this. This is one of the issues that you run into when you start dealing with data types. You say, well, how would you deal with this, Dr. Harmon? I'll tell you real simple is go into the table view and use the GUI and change the data type. Okay, it's that simple. So some of this is a little extraneous. So I think if you look through there, you're going to find a 15.1. I may have a 15.1 part 1 and 16 part 2. And look through those. Here it is, 15 part 1. Okay, then I have a 15 part 2 down there where I have mercifully, I even have a link to a Zoom recording of it. But what you've got here today, okay, I think what we've done is save this, okay, and upload this as LD15. And I'm going to call it a day because I think we've pushed through as much as we want to. And I may just stop here, I think. And because what I really want to get into is the final pieces of this chapter where we do some things like determining if tables are identical, using a literal union, attaching flags, stuff like that. So go ahead and put it up as LD15, what we've done today, and upload that so you make sure you've got it there. And then when we're back, I may just, if I get the time over the weekend, do a little addendum to this for everybody to look at if they care to, or maybe just, you can go ahead and take a look yourself because I think I've got a part 1 and a part 2 in there. Okay, folks, listen, I do appreciate it, and we did get started early, so we're going to conclude here. Thank you so much. Have a safe weekend, and Tuesday we'll have virtual class, and then have a good time on your breaks and be careful. Thank you much.